sandstorms any worse back then than they are now?
Oh my God.
How?
They had plenty of sandstorms, and there's days and sometimes 2 days and nights at a time you wouldn't even see the sun, and it wasn't cloudy either.
It just get dark because of the sand, huh?
Just the sand made it dark.
Do you remember any in particular, any years that were particularly bad, or?
Well, there's so many years. There was more sandstormy years than we've had whitings. That's like it is now.
Did you ever ask yourself why you were living out there?
Yes, I've asked myself why I ever come out there.
Well, it gets pretty bad, I know, even now, but I can imagine back then it was really rough.
Well, whenever it didn't blow sand, it blowed rocks.
Right, sandblasting. I remember that you could hear the train. I remember real well when I lived there on the place that at night you could hear the train go by up between Littlefield and Lubbock, I guess, or Anton or everything.
Yes, you could see it if they see the headlights. And
you could see the lights of the train?
Uh-huh.
You always had some kind of stock pond or some kind of fishing pond out there, didn't you?
No, not always. We had a pond, all right, because it was a lake.
Uh-huh.
And but later on we dug it out and put fish in it.
Right.
And but we didn't dig it out like it is now.
Oh, I see.
They just dug it out and got it for it to hold water and then pumped it in there.
Well, what about the irrigation that you had out there? You didn't have an irrigation well, I guess, for a while. Do you remember?
Oh, a good long while now. You know, if I need some help here, I couldn't tell you when they put that first well down.
But you had dry land farming until the well went down.
Yes, and I think we ought to have it yet.
Well, could you make a crop every year, though, without the irrigation water?
Oh, yes, we made a crop. We made some good crops. In 26, we made bale cotton to acre.
And just with the...
And then we had a sandstorm that blowed it under about 6 foot deep in the ground.
And then you had to go back and dig it out, I guess,
Yeah,
huh?
they tried to. They even run cotton through a thrashing machine to get it for it to go through the gin.
That sounds like that was kind of a bad time there.
It was a bad time.
But eventually you put down the wells, and you had how many, 2 or 3 wells out there on the place?
We got 2.
2 wells?
Uh-huh.
Well, that was always nice to get your feet wet and cool in, though, when you're out in the field, I guess. That good cold water coming out of the ground.
Yes, it was. We had one of the best wells there was out. It was tested out to be among one of the best wells there was out in that whole country out there.
Well, you liked living on the farm, didn't you? Didn't you like being out where wasn't a lot of noise and stuff?
I certainly did. You know that I wouldn't, if I was able to work, I wouldn't be in this burg here.
You'd rather be out on the farm
I'd be
still,
on the farm and have a cow to milk and have something to eat that is fit to eat.
You wouldn't have to worry about what all they put in it, I guess, huh?
No, I wouldn't have to worry about it. I'd take care of it myself.
Well, I remember a little bit of that butchering the hogs and everything. I remember they'd string a hog up there and cut him open and everything spill out into the wheelbarrow, I think is how they cut all the insides.
Then they caught him in the tub sitting in the wheelbarrow.
Yeah. I remember, too, cutting up the meat and salting it down and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You did a lot of that, too, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Well,
we made our own cure. We put in brown sugar and salt and red pepper and made our own cure to salt the meat down.
You used to make soap and all of that, too, didn't you?
Oh, yes, I made soap. I never bought a loaf of light bread till I come to West Texas.
You make your own bread?
I made my own bread.
And then with the washing machine, you'd have to do all your wash. Did you have a motor machine to...
Well, you know, before we left down there, the boys had one. They pulled it with a car. It didn't have a motor. And they pulled it with a car.
You mean you had a belt or something to go on the car engine?
Yeah,
and
on the car wheel, the back wheel.
Oh, on the wheel of the car?
Yeah.
And that'd run your washing machine?
Yes, sir.
I never had heard of that before.
Well, your daddy can tell you about it.
Oh, really? Well, probably, though, you eventually got where you, came to town to do your wash, or?
Oh, yes. And when they put in the happy selves, well, I'd come to town and do my washing. And then the last few years, I had a washing machine that I kept in the bathroom. And
What about driving? Do you remember the first car you ever drove?
Yes, it is. What town was it, Jess? Is that the one we got down there, Davidson?
Ford.
It's a Ford.
About 1919 or 20, somewhere in there?
1919. And I got out and drove it. I went out and you had to crank it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got out there and I cranked it. And I got scared of it. And then I thought, well, didn't run over nobody else. I'll try it out.
Yeah.
So I got in there and I got her all fixed up. And I got it in backing outfit and I put it back there and I got it out and I drove it around the house 2 or 3 times. Then I thought, well, if I can drive it around the house in a circle and surely go down the road. So I just started out and I went to a neighbor's house back up.
Uh-huh. Take anybody with you?
No, just by myself. I didn't want nobody to see me. I didn't want them to tell me.
You didn't want to risk that, huh?
I wanted to do it myself, and then I knew just how to do it.
Well, then you drove all the time then up until 50s or so, didn't you?
Yeah, well, you know, after we come out here, Joe was he was ready to go every time I was.
Uh-huh.
And so he drove for me. And I never did get to learn how to drive till he got out of the family. And
I see.
Then I bought me a Chevrolet, and I learned how to drive that Chevrolet. And then I bought another Chevrolet, and I drove it till I sold it when my eyes got bad, and I didn't think I was capable of driving the car. Instead of letting it sit in the shed and just rot down, I just sold it. Didn't want to even see it.
When did you first get television? It was in the 50s, I know, when we first had TV out here. Did you have a television set out on the farm?
Oh, yeah.
Did you...
But I don't remember for the first, and I don't remember when we got it.
That's probably the days of Amos and Andy. You used to watch Amos and Andy and some of those?
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, then you moved into town here...
Well, after Dad's health failed him, we moved to town.
Uh-huh. Over on 12th Street.
Yeah.
Well...
and stayed a while, and then we moved back to farm.
What was Christmas like back... I want to go back to Arkansas, back when you were a little kid and everything, before you moved out to Texas there. Did you celebrate Christmas like you do now?
Yes, we had to celebrate. Instead of having trees, people taught their children to hang up their stockings, you know, and their socks.
Oh, for Santa Claus to put stuff in the stockings?
Uh-huh. We all got candy and nuts and stuff like that, and we'd hang them up and go to bed in the morning while we'd have that in our stockings. While I never was taught real Santa Claus.
Uh-huh.
But
you did have something...
we had that for, you know, we'd always have get-togethers and have good dinners and things like that.
Well, how many were in your family, before you married, just in your family? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had 1 sister and 2 brothers and myself.
And your name was Belle?
Uh-huh.
And where did your mom and dad come from before they came to Arkansas?
Well, my daddy come from Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
And my mother come from southern part of Arkansas, Red River County, Arkansas.
Uh-huh. So everything was about the same as far as Christmas and all of that. Did you have a turkey?
Oh, well, yeah, some people did. Some people had ham, or they had a hen or something like that. Just about the same thing you did now, only they didn't have trees.
Yeah.
Never had no trees.
And you were farming. Were your parents farming back then too?
Yeah, my daddy was a farmer.
Uh-huh. And so you lived on the farm, I guess, just about all your life until you moved to Littlefield and moved into town.
Well, I never knew what it was. I used to want to think. My sister, she married, and they moved to Vernon, her and her husband. And I used to go over there, and I'd think, oh, I wish I could live in town. I could have so much better, easier time, you know.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, I found out that I was crazy. I had a whole lot easier time on the farm and didn't hear it like this town.
Well, how did you meet Grandpa anyway? How did you meet, how did you run into him?
Well, sir, you know, we was on moving, and we went to Gainesville.
Uh-huh.
And went in the wagon yard. At that time, they had wagon yards to take care of travelers.
Right.
And so we was there in that wagon yard, and Mr. Bitner, Grandpa, your great-grandpa,
uh-huh,
he come into town. He was looking for cotton pickers.
Uh-huh.
And my brother and was with is me and my brother and my sister and her husband and my mother and grandmother and aunt. So he come in there and he wanted to know if we wanted to get a job of cotton picking. Said he didn't, and we just drove. We went out there and we went to work. And when I left that place, when I left there to come to Vernon.
So that's when you met George.
That's when I met Dad.
Yeah.
And
well, how long did you know each other before you got married?
Well, I met him in August and married him in the 11th of December the same year.
You didn't go in for a real long courtship then?
No.
Yeah, right. Well, that hasn't changed a whole lot.
No.
Yeah.
And we lived together 69 years and a little over. And I ain't going to tell you if we didn't have some spats. We had them.
You had a little disagreement every now and then.
We had a disagreement. Just when I heard a woman one time say that her and her husband been living together 40-some odd years and we never had a hard feeling. And when she got through talking, I told her, I said, now you could have told another. But because I don't believe there's ever any two people live together that way. I said, you might not. I said, we never did fuss. Me and my, because Dad wouldn't fuss. I would. I'd have fussed back with him if he'd have fussed, but he wouldn't fuss. He'd get hat and walk off.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. There seems to be something in the Bitner family when the man gets upset, he just closes the door and leaves and goes out someplace.
Yeah. And when he cools off, he comes back, and
I see.
We just forgot our disagreement.
Oh, Well, I bet those were interesting days.
Well, they was. You know, I'd like to live some of them over.
Well, you always remember the good ones, though you don't really remember the bad ones, do you?
Well, you know that it all seemed like it was pretty good. You know, I've worked, dropped corn for people all day and get 35 cents.
And that was didn't have the minimum wage back then.
No.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Then I'd get 35 cents. So that 35 cents would buy just about as much as $10 would now.
What about? Did you ever go to the movies? Did you ever get to come into town and see the motion pictures?
No, well, there wasn't no movies then.
Well, in Littlefield, though, they had.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I used to go to the movies every week.
You'd come into town and go to the show?
Oh, yeah. Me and Jas went to 2 shows one night up here. I told him I wasn't going to him, and boy, he kept me out all night.
Well, did you have, was that at the old Rio Theater, or do you remember the name of the theater? Was it the Palace or the Rio? Or?
Well, it's the Palace up here up on next to the post office where that closest was, and the other is on the other side of the street down further.
And there was also a Ritz at one time over on the, guess that'd be the east side of the street.
Well, yeah. Well, I think it is the Ritz that we went to.
But you did come to the show some then. You liked to go to the movies.
I used to, they used to give away money, and Dad wanted we all to go. I'd try to get him to go, and he wouldn't go, but he'd say, I'll sure give you the money, and you can go.
Because he thought you might win the jackpot, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Did he ever go to the show at all?
Oh, once in a while.
Just every now and then?
Just every now and then. I guess he went with me and Ada and Ernest down there at Graham, the last show he had ever had.
But you did make a few shows in Littlefield back when they had, what was it, cowboy movies or Gene Autry or Roy Rogers?
Just about like, I haven't been to the show. I've been told that the shows has got to where they're really not decent to go to.
But back then it was kind of like cowboy movies.
Yes, they had respectable shows.
What did it cost to go to the show then? Do you remember?
Well, I think 50 cents.
Now it's about $4, I think.
Well, I don't know what it is now. I wouldn't give it to go because.
What about going to town to eat and everything? Did you ever go out and just go out to eat or go to the restaurant?
I used to come to town just to eat.
Yeah. What did a hamburger cost back in the 20s?
Dime.
About a dime?
Mm-hmm.
Could you get? They have French fries back then?
Yeah.
So you could, on 50 cents, you could eat pretty good, I guess, huh?
Oh, well, sure.
Grandpa used to like to come to town on Saturday, didn't he? When he come town.
Oh, yes, he nearly always come to town on Saturday.
And talk with all of his friends.
Yeah.
And I guess he had a lot of friends down.
He'd come to town Saturday night. Sometimes we'd wait and come late after we got our work all done at home. Well, we'd come in late, and then be 10 or 11 o'clock when he got home when he got through talking.
Guess you had to get a haircut and all that kind of thing, too.
Yeah.
Well, that's real interesting. I guess Littlefield's changed some since back then.
Oh, yes, changed a lot.
Did the kids, when they went to school in town here in Littlefield and everything, did they ride a bus or
I rode a bus.
the school bus picked them
My
up?
kids never went to no country school here. They always had town school.
Mm-hmm.
That is, when we moved here, they had a bus that come right by the house.
Well, this has really been interesting. Did you ever think you was ever going to be on TV?
No, I thought about. Yes, I have thought about it. I thought about that. I'd just like to write down, just come into my first beginning, and just put it on down, and then get it on tape.
Well, see, we'll save this tape, and 50 years from now, somebody watch this tape and everything. Things might be a little bit different then. We might be flying around between the moon and here by then. Do you think?
Yeah, I went plane riding once.
You went plane or riding on a plane with Jimmy, didn't you? Didn't you fly with him some?
Yeah, I flew from here down to Arlington.
Yeah. Did that scare you any?
No.
It didn't bother you at all, huh?
Didn't bother me at all.
Didn't make you sick?
No.
Yeah. Well, I wish I could get Mom and Daddy to try it out. I haven't got them convinced they could fly yet.
My neighbor, old man McKee, up there, before he died, Jimmy come over there, and I was out the farm, and Jimmy come after me to go. There he was going that the evening late, and so he told Mr. McKee, asked him, he said, where are you going to take her to? And he said, I hope you don't find her. He didn't want to find me because he's afraid he'd fall down and kill me.
Did Grandpa ever fly?
Oh, Lord, no, he wouldn't let me hardly look for one.
Oh.
I used to want to fly when they put out here, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I want to go flying so bad, but I thought to myself, and when I went to Dallas, I told Jimmy, when I went down there with him, I told him, I said, if your granddaddy knowed I was on this plane, he'd come alive again.
Oh, he wouldn't like that, huh? He's kind of afraid of the flying.
Yeah, he's afraid of it.
Oh, I see.
I never was afraid. Well, I ain't afraid of nothing. And only thing I'm afraid of is somebody. That's the only thing gonna bother me.
You mean somebody trying to get you or something?
Yeah, yes. And now Jesse says, oh, they knew you should lock the doors. I said, that's the reason I got a lock on there. I want them locked.
Yeah, so you won't be surprised in the middle of the night, I guess, huh?
I said they'd have to make a racket before they get in, and I might be scared to death, but still, I'll know they're coming in.
Well, this has really been interesting, talking about the old times. And like you say, if you had a chance to write everything down, you could probably remember a lot of things.
I could study it up by myself better than I can tell you.
Well, I think you've done a real good job myself.
I had, my family consisted of 6 kids.
Uh-huh.
And I had 4 boys and 2 girls. We lost our little girl. The youngest one, she died in 27.
She was, how old was Bessie when she died?
9 years old.
Just 9 years old?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know. I think probably, you might think if you had moved to, what if you had moved to Kentucky or someplace instead of Texas? Do you think things would have been all that different?
Well, my mother, she had always wanted to live in Texas.
Uh-huh.
And my daddy, he didn't like to even hear Texas. And so he left the south part of Arkansas and went right on the Missouri line. We had just a river between us and a mile to the river, and then across the river and you was in Missouri.
Uh-huh.
And so after my daddy died, in about a couple of years after he died, she sold our farm and moved to Texas.
And so you were just destined to be in Texas, I guess, whether you really liked it or not, huh?
Yeah, I never did. Well, I tell you the truth now, I never did like West Texas. And if anybody went with me, I'd have walked back to Gainesville. I like Cook County and down there.
Yeah, the trees and all that, so much nicer.
They had trees, and they had, it didn't sandstorms. We had some wind, but sand didn't just blow rocks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that can really be bad sometimes, and especially back there when you said it got so bad it turned the sky dark, and it was dark for a couple of days and all that.
I've seen it in Oklahoma the same way.
Well, I didn't think it got quite as bad in Oklahoma as it did here.
Oh, boy, I've seen it. I believe I've seen it worse. I did.
Really?
I didn't have as good a house in Oklahoma. I guess that is the reason it seemed worse. But I've seen it just blow there 3 days and nights. You couldn't see the sun. Just the boys will tell you the same thing.
I don't think I'd want to go through that again. I remember a few days where it got so dark the street lights would come on and all of that, but I think it's a little bit better now, not quite as bad as it was then.
Well, I went one time over here on Blackwater Draw. Me and Jewel and her husband before he died. We went over there one Sunday to see a lady, and it come up as a norther and a sandstorm, and it snowed mud. That's true.
That was messy, I bet.
It snowed mud, and at noontime, we got dinner ready before it got so dark, and we sat down at the table and we couldn't even see the plates. It was the darkest pitch. And
no.
she got up and lit the lamp, and you could just, it seemed like it just didn't penetrate the darkness. You could see a little, but you couldn't see around enough to do nothing.
I bet those East Texas pine trees look pretty good then.
That is right out here on just this side of the draw.
And here at Littlefield.
That is here at Littlefield.
Oh, boy.
Now, I'm not advertising the country very much. It wouldn't make a very good land agent.
No, you could sell a bunch of real estate that way, but that's the way it was then, I know. And that was, of course, the Dust Bowl days. Back in those days, all through Kansas and all in this area, it was pretty bad dust for dust.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know now, we get over the TV out here in California. They have winds out there now just be pretty here, and it'd be blowing 60 miles an hour.
Sounds rough. Well, this has been real interesting, and we're going to watch this back on the TV screen here in a little bit, and you won't be able to see it so much, but you'll be able to hear it and everything. And like I say, you know, we'll keep the tape, and we'll be playing this back one of these days.
After I've done kicking up daisies.
Well, you know, everybody might like to know who ran the farm back then. You kept things going pretty good, I guess.
Yeah, I was one that hit the floor every morning.
You got everything rolling, didn't you?
I got everything rolling.
Who had the checkbook? Did you?
I had to access the checkbook just the same as he did.
You both could write the checks, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Pay for the Watkins man or whoever came by.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And he always bought that because I didn't want nothing Watkins had. But he always did. He
But
got
Granddad liked that, huh?
Yeah, he liked it. And he'd get $8 and $10 worth. Well, that is his business. I didn't care if he'd bought 40.
Yeah.
But that is just his business. And I believe in a 50-50 basis. And if I want to do something, I want to do it. And I thought it was nice for me to talk it over with him. Lots of times I didn't do it after I'd hear his opinion.
But if you wanted to...
But if I wanted to do something, and if he wanted to do something, I wanted him to do it if he thought that's what he wanted to do. I didn't want to disappoint him.
But if you wanted to go over and buy a new dress, you didn't have to ask him or anything,
No,
did you?
sir.
You just wrote out the check, huh?
I just went and bought my... I know what... I keep you talking here for a week. I know one time I come uptown and they had these little old plastic belts, you know, some of them red, blue, and every kind.
Uh-huh.
About a little over an inch wide, about an inch and a quarter.
Uh-huh.
And when I went home with that, he said, "What you got in your sack?" I said, "Oh, I bought me a belt." And he said, "Oh, that's it." And I handed it to him, and he taken it out, and he said, "How much you give for that?" I said, "I give a quarter." And he said, "Well, why did you get you a belt?"
Well, he didn't think that was a...
He didn't think that was any count.
Didn't think that was wide enough, huh? Oh, I see.
You know, yeah, I could make a long tape.
Did you make, did you have a Christmas tree out at the farm?
One time.
One time?
Uh-huh. And Jess and his wife and kids is out here, and Virgil and his family. I don't know whether they had any kids at that time or not. They never had no kids for quite a long while after they was married.
Uh-huh. Well, this has been real interesting to find out about what happened back in the early days there, and you'll probably think of something else after we stop here, but we might do it again sometime and talk about some of the things that happened way back when. Let's see, you said you were 90 what now?
93.
93.
Be 94 in August 22nd.
Well, when you roll over on 100, we'll have to make another tape and see what's happening in the next 7 years.
Well,
so.
I hope that I've got sense enough to make it. I feel like I've got just as much sense as I ever had.
Well, you've always had pretty good health. You never have been in the hospital much, have you, once or twice, or have you?
I've been in the hospital. See, back in the older days, why we had our babies all at home.
Yeah.
We didn't go to hospital, and doctors visited the home. Now the doctors don't go to home, you know.
Right.
And
But you haven't been in the hospital much as far as staying for
no,
being sick.
you know, I've been in the hospital 2 times. I guess the time I was up here
Hmm.
since I moved here to town.
That's pretty lucky, really.
And then I was in the hospital in Granfield, Oklahoma, down there. I was in the hospital there twice.
Hmm.
And one time I had pneumonia, and one time I don't remember what the matter with me, but I was in there.
Hmm.